So now on to our third topic, assertiveness and risk management. Lemmings famously will follow each other even when it involves jumping off a cliff, and children of all ages, I think, would probably enjoy this little video. The link's there, just a minute or so of lemmings literally jumping off cliffs, because they do, but they can swim and they normally jump into water, so it's not true that they will follow each other to the death. But quite nice as a starter or to finish off a session on assertiveness or peer pressure. This time the topic links to progression steps in What Matters Statement 3, which is the one that is concerned with saying what you need and feel, so skills of assertiveness, and recognising risks and making your own decisions, so resisting peer pressure, for example, which we look at in this topic. Similar progression of skills listed in SEAL, and again, this can serve as a useful list of what we need to learn, understand and be able to do in relation to assertiveness and risk. So the assembly story in the primary materials is a really useful starting point for all ages, as it has the characters who represent, well, lion representing a kind of aggressive approach, mouse representing a very timid approach, fox representing a kind of wily, manipulative approach, probably approaching passive aggression in many instances, and then human, who comes in with the assertive approach that we're helping children to develop. We've talked about the whole school resources, and these are available free in English and in Welsh on the using the link below on the SEAL website. It also links to creating a fair and equal community, and that's work that's covered in the New Beginning theme. Throughout the materials, there is an approach which looks at 4 aspects of assertiveness, using the right words, body language, eye contact, as well as body language. I suppose it's part of body language, and the way we say the words, so the kind of tone of voice, the volume, and so on. And all of these are developed in parallel throughout the materials. The characteristics of passive, aggressive and assertive behaviours are taught from the earliest years, and the idea of win-win situations is developed throughout the primary years, with increasing sophistication, obviously, as the children get older. In year 2, they are given scripts which they are asked to act out to illustrate passive, aggressive and assertive responses, and that's linked to the outcome, you know, who gets what they want out of this, and that obviously introduces the idea of win-win or lose-win or win-lose situations. In year 3, there's quite a lovely activity outlined, which is the children get into 2 circles into a sort of carousel, and it's a bit like, you know, statues, when the musical statues can play music or whatever, or call out a word, and the children stop and they talk about how they deal with a particular issue that's called out by the teacher. So, you know, something like your friend wants to watch TV, but you want to play together on the computer. How do you resolve it? And they can choose either assertive, aggressive, or passive ways of doing so, which are then explored. In year 6, they look at body language and tone of voice, and we're going to have a look at some of those some of those activities now. So those are some of the characteristics there on that slide, which are helpful for sharing with children. So a lot of the activities are linked to the assembly story, and for younger children, this sort of activity, linking speech bubbles to the animals in the story, so the aggressive ones to lion, passive ones to mouse, and so on. Often teachers do develop this activity to involve children practicing saying the words, and it really does offer them an opportunity to practice the body language and the tone of voice that needs to go along with the words that they're saying. So they develop all the skills in parallel, although the focus in year 4 is using the words and choosing your words carefully. In year 6, there is an activity which is called silent statues, and children are given a slip with either aggressive, assertive or passive on it, and a situation is read out. The children have to get into a pose which will allow others to guess which slip they've received. Again, focusing on that kind of the development of their understanding of the body language. And again, seen some fantastic displays where teachers have taken photos of the poses. And other activities around that, that are suggested in the materials and teachers have developed are showing clips of confrontation in, common TV programs or films or whatever, but without the sound on, so that you can really kind of see that body language building up, the personal space diminishing, the facial expressions and so on. So yeah, sorry, I'm distracted by this picture. This is my eldest son, who's now 38, who's doing some rather lovely, I don't know that body language is assertive, but I just thought it was a lovely picture of body language being quite unambiguous. Eye contact, that really tricky, I think, even for adults, this one, and I love this little challenge that children can do. It's actually really, really difficult to look at anybody in the eye for 30 seconds without giggling or making a joke of it, or kind of looking aggressive, really. And of course, we don't look at people for that long when we're talking, but it's really just to emphasize that, the need to practice looking people in the eye as you ask for something, or as you say no to something, or as you have to say something that you're not very comfortable saying. The temptation, of course, is to look away, or to say, oh, it doesn't matter, or to kind of, get a little bit too close and have that kind of aggressive stare. So it really does make a difference doing this in role play, or even practicing in the mirror, and that will help us to do it IRL, as the young people say, I believe, in real life. So just to remind us, of the importance of that eye contact. Another thing from the Year 6 materials is this idea of setting them, a challenge. What's the most important part of communication? What really gets the message across? The words we say, the way we say the words, or the body language. And as you'll probably be aware, there's a lot of research out there which suggests that the words actually account for only about 7% of the message, and that 55%, or the vast majority, is actually our body language, with the rest being made up of tone that we use to say something in. And this sets the scene really for a lot of the activities in Year 6, which include saying nonsense words in different ways, which obviously helps the children to focus on the tone in which they're being said rather than the words themselves. A little summary of what assertive does sound like, with lots of practice needed again for adults as well as children very often. If you look carefully, not sure you can actually see from this because I may well be in the way. Apologies for that. But if in the Year 6 materials, you'll see there are 2 pictures in the resources. One of them has a dog, this one here that you can see, lying on the mat, and the other one has a very similar animal, but it's clearly a cat. Now, this activity involves placing the children in groups, but one person in each group is given the picture with the dog lying on the mat rather than the cat. All the rest have the cat. It's presented as a memory test for children, and questions are asked of each group to test their memories. One of the questions is, what animal was sitting on the mat? Now, of course, the person with the dog picture is then at odds with the rest of the group, who all say, well, it was a cat, or sorry, the other way round. And the group have to make a decision. Mostly they'll go with the majority vote. Once that's done, the true purpose of the activity is then revealed, and an exploration of how it feels to stand up against the majority, or to feel that you're saying something different to the rest of the group, how it feels. And this then leads on obviously to an exploration of peer pressure and standing up for yourself for what you believe is right. It's a lovely activity, quite fun to do with staff too. The exploration of peer influence or pressure then continues throughout the secondary material. This activity is from the Year 9 materials. The children, I like this, the children actually say, look at each statement, and then they fill in the second column with what they would do in this circumstance, or what they do. And then the third column is the me, them column. So here is me, there's them. And this is the children put a cross to show where this action might fall, on whether this is very much in line with what everyone else does, or whether it's quite an individual decision. And then they talk to their partners about how much influence has the group had on what they do. What would they do if they were left without the group influence, if nobody was there to influence them? And then they put another cross in a different colour on the me, them line. And then obviously that gives rise to quite a lot of discussion about how much our peers influence us in our everyday decisions. This can be followed up then with discussion and acting out peer pressure scenarios, and there's some of those are provided, and others are you can find online. There's quite a lot of this kind of stuff around the healthy relationships work, and a lot of organisations and charities do provide lessons and so on keeping safe. And this obviously can lead on to very specific work or bespoke work for those young people who are at particular risk of peer or adult inappropriate influence. Just before we finish, I wanted to share this wonderful book presented online in a wrap. It's absolutely wonderful, I think, probably for any age child at all, including secondary, along with a great message that roaring isn't always the only way or the best way to achieve our ends. And I think it's a perfect starter, or a plenary activity, or a treat really for all ages. Just a great link there to share with you. So the pause for reflection and application at this stage is really for us again to apply the ideas in the video section preceding this, to think about a situation that we as adults would actually like to be more assertive about. And I'm fairly sure that we've probably all got one or two. So think of a situation and then consider perhaps how your previous responses have fallen into these categories of perhaps aggressive or passive aggressive, manipulative or whiny, a bit like Fox in the assembly story, or passive. What have your responses been up so far? And have a think about how you could deal with that situation in a more assertive way. It's always a good idea to make a practice plan, because assertiveness takes practice. It's the only way that any of us get better at it. And making sure that you consider all those aspects, so your words, your tone, your body language, it must all match up. Can be really helpful to have somebody to practice on, even though it gets a bit giggly and embarrassing at times. Or even, as we mentioned earlier, practicing in the mirror. If you are in a group, you might like to share your plan with a partner or with the group.